There are so many videos online on how to revise and techniques to use, and I've kind of not covered the topic before because of that. I wasn't sure what else to add. However, there is one tip with revision that has always been so useful and impactful for me, and I don't think many people talk about it. And although I know some people do this technique as well, I really think everyone should be doing it to some extent. And if you don't at the moment and you start doing it in your revision from now on, I almost guarantee you will see some level of improvement in the marks you get in your practice exams. I make content on A level maths, but I think this tip can be applied for any subject and any level really, from GCSE all the way to uni. And that's noting down the mistakes you make in your revision. So when I'm revising, I will always keep what I call a corrections book. Sometimes I instead use a Word document, and I'll leave it up to you for which of those formats you prefer. Let's say I'm doing a practice question in a textbook or a practice exam, and on a particular question I lose some marks or I don't know how to do it. What I will do is look at the answers or the mark scheme, make sure I understand where I went wrong and how the question works and how to get the marks, and then I'll write the correction in my book. Now, this book I have on screen here is for a university exam I did. I did a chemistry degree. I sat my A levels 5 years ago now, so annoyingly I don't have my correction books for those exams anymore. But in this book, I have all the errors I made in my practice questions from all different types of questions for this particular subject in my degree. And then about 2 times a week, I normally did it before I went to bed, I would flip through this book and remind myself of the errors I made during these practice questions. And over time, you will find these really start to cement in your brain, these errors. And if you ever come across a similar question again, a question which you got wrong before, it's a lot easier for you to remember exactly what you did wrong and to get the right answer this time. Another really good thing about this tip, in my opinion, is you can start to recognize patterns in where you lose marks. So, for example, the last video I uploaded on this channel, I talked about, in my opinion, the hardest type of question you can be asked in A level maths, which is differential equations in a modeling scenario. I talked about in that video that when I was revising for A levels, I really struggled with those questions in particular. And the way I first realized that was by looking at my corrections book and realizing that type of question kept coming up. I kept losing marks on it over and over again. I really believe when you're doing revision, when you're doing exams, you do not need to be defined by your weaknesses. So I used to have this attitude when I was younger. If I was bad at something, I kind of just accepted that I was naturally really bad at it, and I gambled that they wouldn't ask a question on it in my exam. And if they did ask a question on it in my exam, I just accepted that I lost a load of marks. I kind of have the opposite attitude now. So, for example, take the differential equations in modelling, the topic that I really struggled with. I remember spending an entire afternoon at the library just doing loads of questions on that particular topic. I remember finding loads of the exam questions and writing down the general template of them, how they worked, how to get the marks. And I eventually actually became really good at those type of questions, and it actually became one of my strengths instead. Rather than giving up on a particular topic, try and be brave. Try and get in a good setting, maybe a library or maybe somewhere quiet at home. Try and look at the questions they ask on this particular topic with a fresh and open mind. Try and find different resources online that maybe explain the topic in different ways. Write down your own notes about the questions. Something I do a lot with exam questions I struggle with, and I think this is another good tip, is to find a particular question on this topic and then find a mark scheme or maybe some sort of model answer online on this question. And then read the mark scheme and see if you can follow along with it and that it makes sense to you. Then cover up the mark scheme and try and do the same question yourself and try and do the same working and try and get to the correct answer and see if it makes sense to you. And then if you can do that, find a new question on this particular topic and try and do it without the mark scheme. Try and do it from scratch. If you can't, repeat this process, so get the mark scheme or get the model answer and go through it again and see if it makes sense to you. And then keep repeating this process until you can do the questions without the mark scheme. Good luck with your exams, your system soon. Quick plug, I make Edexcel A-level maths content. I've been making videos, I've made videos now on the entire syllabus. If you need a resource like that, I would really appreciate you checking out my stuff.